Imagine two people living in the same city. Both pay $2,100 a month in rent. Both live in apartments of similar size. The walls are the same color, the floors are the same, even the morning sun enters their windows at almost the same angle. From the outside, their lives appear nearly identical. But beneath the surface, their financial realities could not be more different. The first person earns $95,000 per year. On paper, they are doing well. Their income places them comfortably above the national average. Friends assume they are successful. Their lifestyle appears polished and modern. But life has a way of introducing surprises: a sudden car repair, a medical bill that insurance does not fully cover, an unexpected tax adjustment, and suddenly, despite the strong income, they are only 2 paychecks away from serious financial strain. Every month feels like a careful balancing act, income flowing in, expenses flowing out, with very little margin for error. Financially, it feels a bit like walking on a tightrope. One unexpected gust of wind, and the balance becomes difficult to maintain.
Now consider the second person. They earned $52,000 per year, almost half the income of the first. Their apartment is simpler. It may not contain the newest electronics or the most fashionable furniture, but it is organized, functional, and comfortable. More importantly, this person has built something quietly powerful. They have 18 months of living expenses saved. When unexpected events occur, a broken washing machine, a sudden travel expense, an unplanned bill, those events barely disturb their sense of stability. Problems still appear, but they do not create panic. Life feels predictable, calm, manageable. Now pause for a moment and consider the contrast. One person earns nearly double the income, yet lives under constant financial tension. The other earns far less, yet experiences far greater financial stability. At first glance, this seems to contradict what most people believe about money. We are often taught that higher income automatically leads to greater security. But clearly, reality is more complicated than that. So what explains this difference? Why does someone with nearly double the income struggle, while someone earning far less quietly thrives? The answer is not luck. It is not credit scores. It is not education. The real explanation lies in something much more subtle: psychology. The invisible patterns that shape how people think about money, how they decide what to spend, how they react to financial pressure, and how they protect themselves against uncertainty. To understand this more clearly, picture the daily life of the first person. They replace their car every few years to keep up with newer models. They dine out several times a week because it feels convenient after long workdays. Subscriptions to apps, services, and digital platforms accumulate slowly in the background. None of these decisions feel dramatic, but over time, they form a lifestyle that is expensive to maintain. And as social media constantly displays the lifestyles of friends and colleagues, a quiet pressure begins to form. The pressure to keep up, to upgrade, to participate, to signal success. The result is a life that appears prosperous, but often feels financially fragile.
Now picture the second person again. They drive a reliable used car that still performs well. They cook at home more often, sometimes experimenting with new recipes. When they shop, they tend to focus on things that will genuinely improve their daily life rather than simply impress others. Their choices are not driven by impulse. They are guided by something far more powerful: long-term thinking. And because of that mindset, financial tension rarely enters their daily life. The difference between these two lives is not opportunity. It is not circumstance. It is mindset, habits, and a set of hidden rules that most people never consciously learn. Rules about spending, rules about saving, rules about how small decisions quietly compound over time. These rules operate slowly and almost invisibly, but across months and years, they shape financial outcomes in dramatic ways. They determine whether money gradually builds stability or gradually creates pressure. And once you begin to understand these hidden patterns, something important becomes possible. You begin to see that financial security is not determined only by how much money you earn. It is determined by how you think about money and the decisions that follow from that thinking. By the end of this video, you will understand these rules. You will see why income alone is often a poor predictor of financial stability. And most importantly, you will discover a set of small mental shifts, simple changes in awareness and behavior that can gradually transform the trajectory of your finances and your life over the coming decades. Most financial advice focuses on the surface: income, credit scores, or sheer willpower. Earn more, pay off your debt, budget harder. Simple, right? But these are surface-level solutions. They only address symptoms, not the underlying cause. The real determinant of financial success is behavioral and psychological. It's invisible. It's subtle. It's how people value things, how they plan for the unexpected, and how they navigate scarcity and abundance. High income does not guarantee wealth. Some people earn 6 figures, yet live paycheck to paycheck. Every month is a balancing act: bills, subscriptions, lifestyle upgrades, and they never feel secure. Others earn far less, yet steadily grow wealth over time. They're patient, strategic, focused on compounding and long-term outcomes rather than instant gratification. Let's make this concrete. Picture someone earning $150,000 a year. With each raise, their lifestyle inflates: a new car every 3 years, dining at the trendiest restaurants, subscribing to every app that promises convenience or status. They feel pressure, subtle but constant, to keep up with peers, neighbors, friends on social media. Every month, despite the high income, they may save very little. Their net worth stagnates, and decades later, they may retire with little to show for a lifetime of high earnings. And this is where most people unknowingly trap themselves financially. Now contrast this with someone earning $45,000 a year. They live within their means, focusing on necessities over luxuries. They prioritize saving. They invest in things that compound over time, whether it's a retirement account, a small business, or an education that grows their skills. Each small, deliberate choice adds up. Decades later, their net worth is healthy. Their financial life is calm. They sleep peacefully, knowing they're secure. This is not luck. It is psychology in action. Every daily decision, choosing to cook at home, delay a purchase, save a small percentage of income, compounds quietly, invisibly. Over time, those choices produce vastly different financial realities, even when starting from similar income levels or opportunities. This hidden truth, that behavior, mindset, and compounding choices matter far more than salary alone, is the key to breaking the trap that keeps so many people stressed, anxious, and financially constrained. If you can begin to see money not as a scorecard of worth, but as a reflection of your decisions and your psychological habits, you begin to shift the trajectory of your life in ways that income alone cannot achieve. Now let's explore the hidden rules that quietly govern financial outcomes. These are not about willpower or luck. They are psychological truths, habits, and compound effects that shape who ends up thriving financially and who remains constrained, regardless of income.
Now let's explore the hidden rules that govern financial outcomes. The first rule is simple, yet surprisingly powerful. Calculate cost per use. Most people judge spending by the price tag they see in the store, but price alone tells you very little about the real cost of something. Imagine buying a jacket for $200 and wearing it only twice before it sits in your closet for the rest of the year. When you break that down, that jacket effectively cost you $100 every time you wore it. Now imagine another jacket that costs $400. At first glance, it seems expensive, but suppose you wear that jacket regularly for years, 200 times over its lifetime. Suddenly, the math changes. That jacket costs just $2 per use. The difference here isn't the money spent. In fact, the second person spent twice as much up front. The real difference is how they think about value versus cost. People who focus only on price often make impulsive decisions. They buy cheap items repeatedly, replacing them again and again. Over time, the spending quietly adds up. Meanwhile, people who think in terms of cost per use begin to see purchases differently. They prioritize durability, usefulness, and long-term value. Over a decade, this single shift in thinking can dramatically change how money flows through a person's life. High earners often fall into the trap of buying things for status or appearance, items that look impressive but deliver very little long-term value. Meanwhile, someone earning far less may focus on items they will actually use, items that solve problems, items that last. And over time, those quiet, value-driven decisions allow their money to stretch further, last longer, and accumulate more effectively. What looks like a small mental habit, simply asking, "How often will I really use this?" can become a powerful filter that protects your finances from thousands of unnecessary dollars over the years. The second rule is something economists call lifestyle creep. It's one of the most common financial traps, and it happens so gradually that most people don't even notice it. Lifestyle creep occurs when income rises, but expenses rise even faster. At first, the changes feel small: a slightly nicer apartment, a slightly newer car, eating out a little more often, subscribing to a few more services that promise convenience or entertainment. Individually, each upgrade feels reasonable. After all, the income has increased, so the spending feels justified. But over time, these small adjustments quietly reshape a person's entire financial structure. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine someone earning $50,000 per year. After a promotion or career change, their salary increases to $70,000. That's an additional $20,000 of income. On paper, it looks like a major improvement, but what often happens next is predictable. A new car lease replaces the old reliable one, the apartment gets upgraded, dining out becomes a weekly habit instead of an occasional treat. Small luxuries slowly become normal. By the end of the year, that extra $20,000 may already be spoken for. Perhaps $18,000 goes toward lifestyle upgrades, leaving only $2,000 saved. The result is surprising. Despite earning much more money, the person's financial position has barely improved. Why does this happen? Because the human brain has a tendency to link spending with happiness and progress. When income rises, the mind instinctively looks for ways to upgrade life immediately. But the problem is that lifestyle upgrades compound just like investments do. Every new expense becomes a permanent obligation, and the more obligations someone carries, the harder it becomes to build financial security. Escaping lifestyle creep requires something rare: deliberate awareness. It means deciding in advance how much of every raise will improve your lifestyle and how much will quietly strengthen your future. Without that awareness, even a very high income can disappear into a life that feels expensive but never truly secure. The third rule is about something far less glamorous than income or investments, but often far more important: liquidity. Liquidity simply means having money available when life becomes unpredictable. Think of it as a financial shock absorber, because no matter how carefully someone plans their life, unexpected events are inevitable. A sudden medical bill, a job loss, a broken car, a family emergency. These events are not rare. They are part of normal life. The difference between financial panic and financial stability often comes down to one simple question: how long can you sustain your life without new income? For some people, the answer is 2 weeks. Their paycheck arrives, and almost immediately it is committed to rent, groceries, bills, and obligations. If that paycheck stops, stress begins almost instantly. With 6 months of expenses saved, the situation changes. Unexpected events become manageable instead of catastrophic. There is time to think clearly, time to make rational decisions rather than desperate ones. But when someone has 12 to 18 months of expenses saved, something deeper happens. They gain true financial resilience. Job loss becomes an inconvenience instead of a crisis. Opportunities can be evaluated calmly instead of rushed out of fear. Decisions become deliberate rather than reactive. This is why a high-income individual with no savings can actually be more financially fragile than someone earning much less but holding a strong emergency buffer. Income may determine how much money flows into your life, but liquidity determines how stable your life remains when that flow temporarily stops. In the end, financial security is not built by salary alone. It is built by behavior, by consistently protecting yourself against the unexpected. The fourth rule is one of the most powerful forces in finance and also one of the most underestimated: compounding. Compounding is what happens when money begins to generate returns, and those returns begin generating returns of their own. At first, the growth appears slow, almost insignificant, but over time, the effect becomes dramatic. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine setting aside $5,000 and investing it at an average return of 7% per year. After 1 year, that money grows slightly. After 5 years, the increase becomes noticeable. After 10 years, the growth begins to accelerate. But after 20 years, that original $5,000 quietly becomes $19,320. Nothing extraordinary was required. No dramatic risks, no complicated strategies. Just time, patience, and consistency. Now consider the alternative. The same $5,000 could easily disappear into short-term luxuries, a few expensive gadgets, a vacation upgrade, a handful of impulse purchases. Those things may provide brief satisfaction, but financially, their long-term return is zero. The real difference between these two outcomes is not income or intelligence. It is the ability to recognize that small decisions today shape financial reality decades into the future. Compounding rewards people who think long-term. It rewards patience. It rewards discipline. It rewards the quiet habit of letting time work on your behalf. Flashy income may attract attention, but steady compounding is what quietly builds real financial stability over a lifetime. The fifth rule moves beyond numbers and into something deeper: how the human mind interprets money. Behavioral economists have discovered an interesting pattern in how people experience financial gains and losses. Losses feel far more powerful than gains feel rewarding. Losing $100 tends to hurt more emotionally than gaining $100 feels rewarding. Because of this imbalance, the brain becomes highly sensitive when money is constantly flowing out. Rent, bills, subscriptions, debt payments. Even if income is stable, the repeated feeling of loss can create a quiet sense of financial tension. Over time, that tension begins to influence behavior. People start searching for ways to temporarily escape the feeling of scarcity. And one of the most common ways they do this is through spending. A new phone, a fashionable outfit, a luxury purchase that signals success, at least for a moment. Ironically, these purchases are often attempts to feel financially secure, even if they may worsen the underlying situation. This pattern is closely related to something economists call mental accounting. Instead of viewing money as one interconnected system, people tend to mentally separate it into categories. They may treat a tax refund like bonus money, or justify an expensive purchase because it was paid with a credit card rather than cash. These mental shortcuts can make spending feel easier in the moment, but they can also obscure the bigger financial picture. Understanding these psychological patterns is crucial, because once you recognize how your mind interprets gains, losses, and categories of money, you can begin to make decisions that are calmer, clearer, and less driven by emotional impulses. And over time, that awareness helps break the cycle where people spend in order to escape scarcity, but unknowingly recreate it.
The sixth rule is about something many people misunderstand: debt. Debt is often discussed as if it were purely good or purely bad. But in reality, debt is simply a financial tool. What matters is how it is used. Some forms of debt can contribute to long-term growth. Borrowing to build a business, acquire productive assets, or invest in property may generate income or value over time. This is often referred to as productive debt, debt that has the potential to grow alongside your financial life. But there is another category of debt that behaves very differently: debt used for consumption, luxury purchases, impulse shopping, high-interest credit cards. These forms of borrowing do not produce anything that grows in value. Instead, they quietly drain future income. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine carrying $20,000 in credit cards at 20% interest per year. If that balance is not aggressively paid down, the interest alone can accumulate dramatically. Over a 5-year period, the interest payments may reach $24,000. In other words, the cost of borrowing may exceed the original purchase itself. What makes this particularly powerful is that interest compounds in the opposite direction of investment. While investments slowly grow your wealth, high-interest debt quietly erodes your financial freedom. Every dollar paid in interest is a dollar that cannot be saved, invested, or used to strengthen your future. Over time, this creates a hidden form of pressure, a financial weight that reduces flexibility and limits opportunity. Therefore, understanding the psychology of debt is essential, because once you begin to see borrowing not as instant purchasing power, but future obligations, it becomes easier to separate the forms of debt that support long-term growth from those that quietly undermine it. The seventh and final rule ties everything together. At its core, financial outcomes are not shaped by a few dramatic decisions made once in a lifetime. They are shaped by small choices made quietly every single day. Most people imagine wealth as the result of large opportunities, a high salary, a lucky investment, a major breakthrough. But in reality, financial stability is usually the result of something far less dramatic: consistent decision awareness. Every time money is spent, a small decision is made. Often, these decisions feel insignificant in the moment: a subscription here, a purchase there, an upgrade that feels justified because everyone else seems to have it. Individually, none of these choices appear powerful, but over months and years, they begin to form a trajectory. Some decisions prioritize instant satisfaction, a quick reward that feels good in the present but offers little long-term benefit. Other decisions prioritize delayed growth, choices that may feel less exciting now, but quietly strengthen financial stability over time.
The difference between these two paths is rarely obvious in a single moment, but when those small decisions accumulate across hundreds, even thousands of everyday choices, they begin to shape an entire financial life. Awareness is what changes the outcome. When someone begins to pause and ask simple questions: do I truly need this? Will this purchase improve my life next year or only today? They start shifting the pattern. Over time, that awareness creates something powerful, a life where money becomes a tool for stability and freedom rather than a source of stress and reaction. And that shift begins with something simple: noticing the choices that quietly shape the future. Let's return to the two people we met at the start. Their differences were not in income, luck, or education. Everything that seemed like an advantage was secondary. The real difference? Their choices, their mindset, and the small, consistent behaviors they practiced every day. Picture the first person again. High income, expensive tastes, chasing trends, always stressed. Emergencies feel catastrophic. Every month is a battle between income and obligations. Anxiety is their constant companion. Now, picture the second person. Lower income, deliberate spending, investing consistently, living within means.
Emergencies barely ripple the surface. Life feels calm, predictable, and secure. Their wealth grows quietly, compounding over decades without drama or flashy displays. The lesson here is simple, yet rarely taught. Wealth is not created by earning more. It is created by thinking differently about money, focusing on behavior over salary, focusing on psychology over trends, focusing on compound growth over instant gratification. These small decisions made consistently shape decades of your life. Imagine standing at a fork in the road. One path, stress, scarcity, chasing status, living paycheck to paycheck. Other path, calm, secure, compounding growth, freedom to choose your life. Every choice you make today nudges you toward one path or the other. Not tomorrow, not next month, today. Your future self is silently watching the decisions you make now. The trajectory is yours to set. And when you understand the psychology behind it, you gain control. Control over stress, control over decisions, control over wealth. The choice is yours. Deliberate, thoughtful, calm, no rush, just clarity. If this helped you see money differently, subscribe for more insights and practical strategies. Take control, understand the psychology, and let your future self thank you.